Okay, we are back looking at some more French and Indian War battles. I'm moving along in this game, and we're going to do the Battle of Lake George, which again is another British sort of defensive set piece engagement. Although historically, this battle was a narrow British victory, so we're going to hope to see. I suspect we'll be able to replicate that given what we're working with here. So we've got this British camp here on the shore of Lake George, with this road running through it. Here's the British starting positions. They had to start within 3 of the British camp, which is this hex right here where that unit is. Very important. I've elected to start some of my units forward. There's a small gap right here with these entrenchments and this pond. And I've elected to start some British units in there defensively with a reserve line under Johnson behind that, because I suspect that the French, that would be one place where they could punch through to get into the camp. And once they do that, I think it might be hard to hold. These entrenchment hex sites will help the British. They've also got some Iroquois allies on their side here, so it's their only light infantry unit. And then partway through the scenario, we will get this British, well, I guess it's a provincial New York and New Hampshire regiment, or, I guess it's a regiment, coming up this road. But this is also a hex that the British are going to have to defend. Now, because of the setup, I can't actually start anyone back here. And if we look at the French force makeup, you can see that they only have 2 regiments of regulars. As well as Dieskau, but then they have a whole bunch of Canadian provincial militia. These appear to be some Coureurs de Bois, and then they've got Saint Pierre and these 3 Abenaki units, all of whom are light infantry, and they're going to be able to. The French are going to be coming on from this side of the map, I suspect, probably within here, so they don't have to cross this stream. And those light infantry are likely going to make a beeline, probably for this hex down here. The French did choose they get 4 chits, 4 tactics chits this scenario. So they did 2 bayonet attacks, a forced march because they know they've got to cover a lot of ground, and an ambush, which if they get caught up in these woods will allow them to hopefully win a combat. The British have just gone with volley 3 times because they want to get as much firepower on the French as they possibly can. As the French, I'm thinking I have to commit kind of one way or the other. Do I want to commit to blocking off this road, or do I want to commit to try and punching through to the fortress here? Both of those are heavy demoralization penalties for the British Army, but the French strength is far less than in the last scenario. So I'm curious to see how scripted this is. I did learn about how kind of deadly combat is, which I still don't know how I feel about. It is incredibly deadly, and so engaging in combat only when you're really sure that you're going to have the advantage is going to be kind of important. Should also mention the 2 British artillery units are here under these Rhode Island and New York provincial units. Those are also worth big points if the French can take them. They're behind entrenchment hex side, so I guess a head-on assault against those positions is probably going to go badly. Let's get started. I'm going to move this along a lot quicker than the last game because it's also a small scenario, and I really want to get to Quebec. So I'll just check in at the end of every turn, and we'll recap what happened as we go. All right, so the French used their forced march chit on turn 1 to sweep out of here into these woods, approaching the camp from the, I guess this would be the southeast. The Iroquois have moved to block off this road, and the British have kind of repositioned themselves along the entrenchments for a potential attack, with Lyman moving down here to make sure that anyone who's coming from this angle is going to have to fight him across these entrenchment hex sides. 3rd Massachusetts moved out of the reserve. We're going to see what happens. We'll probably take up a position right there. And Johnson and Williams here on the left flank, awaiting to see what the French are going to do. Should also mention here that Dieskau and the French regulars, along with these Canadian militia, they didn't get as close as they could. They didn't want to be bombarded by artillery. They're going to try and find a way to... It's going to be tough to approach in this open area, so I'm thinking the French are going to want to come around this way to avoid those cannons. All right, turn 2, French closing in using the woods as cover. We did have 1 bombardment here that disordered this militia. So Dieskau is probably going to have to hang back this turn and see if he can't recover him before another bombardment takes that militia out. Meanwhile, the light infantry is going to continue moving up this way. The one thing I should mention is that these New York, New Hampshire provincials, they only come in once there's an engagement, and only then a 1/3 chance. So the British got to be really careful that the French don't sweep past them. And I think the French strategy here of making the British kind of come out of the camp and commit to protecting this road is going to be one that's going to provide some interesting decisions. And as I'm attempting to rally this unit, I realized I misunderstood the rules in the last scenario that I played through, and that actually made it quite a bit easier for the French, I think, than it should have been. And that is that the leader doesn't add his number there. He just adds a +1 to the rally if he's within the range. So with Montcalm being a +3 or whatever it was, that was making the rally for the French a little too easy. So in this case, This unit's going to add 1 for being in the leader's range and 1 for the counter, so a +2. So he needs a 4 or higher to rally, and he doesn't get it. So maybe take my last playthrough with a bit of a grain of salt, although I still think it was probably hopeless for the British in that scenario. But the leader provides only a +1, not a plus whatever his rating is. All right, well, after the French have failed to rally twice in a row and more fire being put on this militia, the British have decided under Williams with these Massachusetts provincials that they're going to attack. So we've got a 3-to-1 attack here on this particular unit on the edge of the woods who's caught kind of out, and let's see what happens there. 3-to-1. It's a 2. That's probably pretty good. DR. And a DR result is a defender routed. So eliminate all disordered and artillery units. Yep, so he's disordered, so he's just eliminated. And we have our first blood of the game, and that is going to, I think, give a chance for the British to come on potentially to reinforce, but it may be that the French have to be the attackers. In any case, I have to decide whether I want this Massachusetts unit to advance, because then he'll have to fight Dieskau. But if I don't advance, then I can potentially threaten the supply train here, and that will force the French to have to pull back. So British drawing first blood. All right, well, we had our first engagement here with the French against the Iroquois in these woods, and the Iroquois made a pretty good defense, actually disordered both French attacking units. Unfortunately, the Abenaki were able to rally, so that's going to be a tough hill to climb for those Iroquois units. And then Dieskau's counterattack against the 2nd Massachusetts with his regulars did manage to demoralize them, but did not displace them. And now Williams is coming in behind. I have to make the decision, do I want Johnson to leave the safety of the fortifications to come around here? Williams can actually get around, and we can actually do a 2-unit attack here against Dieskau and his La Reine regiment. We don't want to leave it too undefended, because you can see that the French are getting ready to kind of like surround it and attack from multiple sides. So it's the British go here on turn 5. All right, so the Iroquois were beaten off by the Abenaki, leaving that road hex wide open for the French on their next movement phase. The attack over here was unsuccessful by the French, a counterattack. Both Dieskau and Williams' units were disordered, and this militia unit who attacked here to give Dieskau better odds actually routed from that attack. So a little bit even, a little bit disruptive. The French are getting ready for this first major assault. They're going to want to try and drive across here with these light infantry units while the battle is kind of raging around them, and that's what the French are going to do next turn. So I think the British, sensing that, they got to be careful though, because if the British lose this engagement here, then it's basically free reign on the entrenchment. So maybe at this point, waiting them out is maybe the better, smarter idea. Well, it's kind of going bad to worse for the British. This forced attack led to the 1st Massachusetts being eliminated, leaving Williams alone in a hex. And this French regulars, Languedoc, moved up. And as soon as the leader is in a zone of control, he is eliminated, captured presumably. And now the French regulars are going to put the hurt on this provincial unit, and the French are going to have an unobstructed run at the entrenchments. Perhaps we'll see how it turns out. I mean, it was very useful to disrupt the French march, and we moved some artillery inside the camp, and we did actually put a disordered here on St. Pierre's unit. But the Mohawk and the Abenaki have gone ahead with the planned attack anyway, and they're going to try and take out Lyman's position here on the corner. And if they can get that, then they'll have entrance into the camp, and the British will have to scramble to kind of defend. So, yeah, looking tough. The French regulars' rally ability is actually really strong, much stronger than the provincial units that the British have in this battle. All right, well, the assault on the camp did not go well. Both Native American units became disordered. They couldn't rally. Lyman didn't suffer any losses there. And unfortunately, Dieskau was not able to rally his units. The British unit that they attacked this turn went down fighting, and though it was eliminated, it actually was an exchange result with really bad odds against it. That disordered Languedoc and actually eliminated the La Reine regiment that was under Dieskau. So the French have, at least in this section of the battlefield, have stalled out pretty hard as we go into the British turn. And we're going to have some artillery fire here from the British now that these units are exposed. Saint-Pierre did manage to rally, so now the the French light infantry and Abenaki are going to have to come to the aid of these Mohawk here, and it's going to be tough. Fighting across these entrenchment hex sides is really difficult. We're probably going to have to use some of our French bayonet attack chits this turn to double our attack power, certainly. Well, Lyman managed to eliminate those Native American units at the walls, at the entrenchments. But the British have a problem, and that is that they are demoralized. So because that combat ended up becoming an exchange result, the 1st Connecticut now are disordered, and they're not going to be able to rally this turn. Demoralized armies cannot rally their disordered units. So what the British have here at full strength, that's what they've got right now to finish this battle, which could be a tall order if Dieskau can get his units, if Dieskau can get his units back into fighting shape. The one bright side is that the British rolled to see if the New York, New Hampshire reinforcements showed up. They did, and they're going to skirt by this road through the woods to see if they can put some sort of pincer maneuver on, or at least block the French from getting off the kind of assault they want to get off on this position. So turn 8 we are going into. And on the beginning of turn 8, we were rolling to see if there was fog settling over the battlefield, and unfortunately for the British, we did get it. That is going to cut the range, the visibility line of sight by British artillery, and I believe it might have 1 or 2 other impacts. I'll check on that, but it's certainly an advantage for the French, who are trying to make an approach to this fortified encampment with some cover or with some help. All right, there wasn't much happening on the fog turn because of a couple of things that the fog does. It halves your movement rate, and it also gives you a -1 to the rally. So the French decided to just reposition and wait for the moment. And now we are on turn 10. The fog has lifted, and Saint-Pierre and his light infantry have decided to make the assault on the on the British fortifications. We are going to have a bunch of battles here, and this is where the British are going to spend. Where the French are going to spend their chits, because they do need to break their way in here. So we got double bayonet attacks, but we also have the British able to use their volley attacks. And I may use both, but I may use one. But we're going to roll up these combats and see what the outcome is to this massive charge on the British encampment. And I am actually incorrect. The bayonet attack only applies to regulars, so the French regulars have to be involved in the combat in order for those to be used. So actually the British may have a bigger advantage here than I initially thought. All right, the British closing the trap on Saint-Pierre and his light infantry. So we've got the 3rd Massachusetts and Lyman, who's moved over from this position, attacking Saint-Pierre. And in order for Lyman not to also have to attack this militia, we've moved the New York, New Hampshire provincial rangers or light troops up so that they can attack them. So we've got pretty good odds here. We've got decent odds here. We're going to have the British attack. Let's see what happens with the New York, New Hampshire provincials. It is a 4 on 1.5 to 1. That is no effect. I mean, that's still pretty good. I'll take that. No effect. This one here, we've got 3, 4, 5, 6 to 3. So 2 to 1 attack there. The British haven't been rolling well this game. Let's see what we can get. We got a 2 on 3 to 1. That is a defender rout. So that is going to actually eliminate. No, it's not going to eliminate. It's going to reduce or disorder this militia, and then when a unit routs, you roll a die to see how many hexes away it runs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down here with Saint-Pierre in tow. The British could advance if they wanted. They definitely don't want to do that. Maybe they do. Well, the French, yeah, maybe they do actually. Force the French to attack at horrible odds. We're going to move the 3rd Massachusetts there. And that is going to be a real nasty situation for those light units who are now caught against the British encampment as their leader flees to the baggage train back here. Dieskau still unable to get this provincial militia rallied. I don't know what they're doing in the woods, looking for mushrooms or something. But what I thought was going to be a swift British defeat has turned into kind of a debacle for the French as we head into turn 11. All right, well, here we are. Dieskau decided he was just going to give up trying to organize this militia, and he decided to undertake a charge with his remaining French regulars in this battle under Languedoc. And they charged out of the woods against Johnson. Sensing that there was trouble over here under Saint-Pierre's command, Dieskau decided he was going to try a diversionary attack against the encampment. He did use his bayonet attack. He was allowed to do that because we've got French regulars here. That doubled the regular strength, so we had 10, 8 plus 2, Dieskau's 2 is 10. Johnson decided to use his defensive volley, obviously, so that was 2, 4, 5. But double, sorry, it was 2, 4, 6, 7, so it was 10 to 7, which is 1.5 to 1, I believe. And 1.5 to 1 at 3 ends up in an exchange. I think I'm doing this math right, because the unit will be doubled. So 2, 4 plus the volley makes it tripled, 6, 7. And Dieskau was 8, 10. Yeah, 10 to 7. So I believe that is 1.5 to 1. And yeah, so that becomes an exchange result with the two of them, which is probably not what the French wanted here. So we do this, and we do this, eliminate the first Connecticut, so that's more demoralization. And Johnson is left here in this hex, kind of exposed. I believe it was here, actually. Yeah, so unfortunately the French, because of this attack over here, we had the Coureurs de Bois, who were in this hex, eliminated on the attack that they were forced to make. And that has the French army reach its demoralization point. And that's bad, because now the French cannot rally their units. And as you can see, we've got units down here that are kind of in no man's land and are easy pickings for the British light infantry that have come on. All right, well, at this point, the British sense blood in the water. They have left sensing that the French are wavering and on the on the cusp of breaking. These New York provincial troops and Johnson and the 2nd Connecticut have decided they're going to launch an attack against Dieskau and his disordered Languedoc regiment here. And then Lyman, the 3rd Massachusetts, the Rhode Island provincial troops, and these New Hampshire units have decided to attack Saint-Pierre in these woods. It's not going to go well. The one element that the French do have, is that they can play this ambush, since we're fighting in woods, to double. Over here, it's not so great, unfortunately. And yeah, there's one mistake I made, which was when Saint-Pierre took his rout result from here. Leaders, if they're with a unit, can convert a rout result into a withdrawal, which is a 1-hex retreat. So I moved Saint-Pierre to where he would have retreated after that combat, and that's what led to this situation here. So let's see if the British can win the game. Well, okay, we come to the end of turn 13, 2 turns shy of the end of the scenario, and as you can see, the British really turned things around and won the battle handily. The Abenaki sort of routed, well, not routed, but they were demoralized, and so they moved down to try and protect this entrance hex here, supply hex, just to see if they could make the British fight them out of it for the victory points. And the British came down and did just that. A party under Lyman surrounded the Abenaki and destroyed them. The French supply train and the remaining disordered Canadian militia units essentially moved as far as they could to the edge of the map, and we'll just say they withdrew from the battlefield, leaving the British in complete control of the Lake George camp. This expedition, which saw the defeat of both Saint-Pierre and Dieskau, who I believe was the governor of Canada, or the lieutenant governor, something like that, completely annihilated, perhaps captured, perhaps wounded. It certainly did not achieve what they set out to do, which was to take the Lake George British camp. So let's check the victory points here on this scenario. So the final demoralization levels for the French were at 31, which is incredibly high. The British, they were at 18, so both sides are going to get points for that. So, victory points. The British Army was at 100% or higher of its demoralization level. So, the French get 2 points there. And that's about it. The British, they're going to get 3 points for demoralizing the French Army to 100%. And then they're going to get an additional point for having units in the British camp hex. And they're going to get another 2 points for the occupation of the Fort Lyman line of communication hex. So that's going to be 5 points. 6 points to 2. That's a +4. That is a substantive British victory which is just 1 point higher than the historical British marginal victory. So I guess it was a debacle in real life as well. That was the scenario of Lake George, the 6th of September, 1755, the struggle for upper New York. And yeah, so that one was a little bit more fun. The wild swings of fate, where it looked certain that the French were going to overrun the British positions. Suddenly the British counterattack ended up just completely disrupting the French plans. I think while I was skeptical of that initial British advance to attack Dieskau's forces here, I think that slowed the French down quite enough that they were never able to be comfortable to assault the British camp from this direction, and they were relying on light units sort of in the rear, and that just never materialized for them. Some lucky shots with the British artillery as well helped to keep the French at bay. And next, we're going to move on to what I really bought this game for, which is the Battle of Quebec on the Plains of Abraham. This is the battle that ended the French and Indian War, essentially. Here's the city, the fortress of Quebec. Here's where the French are going to deploy. And then the British are going to be coming from this direction. Looks like behind this line here. Remember they climbed the cliffs by the St. Lawrence River. And we're going to have a clash on the Plains of Abraham here with a whole host of units. I'm excited to get this one going. And that will be the final video I do on French and Indian War battles from S&T 340.